Hello, this short video will talk about what happens when your simulation setup is reversed. So what happens if you reverse what we call a success and a failure? Turns out you're going to get exactly the same answer, but an example is shown to show you how that happens. All right, let's go ahead and get started then. So the example that we're going to continue to look at here is from Module 1, Part 6. It talks about the gender discrimination case study. What we had done in the notes was to set up a situation for hired females being a success. The setup of our reference distribution looked like what we have here in the screen, middle of the screen. The reference distribution is set up under no discrimination. I was keeping track of the number of females hired here. The left side of this distribution would indicate that I have discrimination against females. The right side of the distribution would be discrimination against males. And also for this particular example, there were a total of 48 hires, and 14 of those were women. So in setting up our reference distribution, what we had done is labeled a success as hired female, a failure as a hired male. The 38.3% is the success that the probability, that a female would have been hired, and I had 48 trials. The cutoff value that we ended up determining from our reference distribution was 12. Again, 12 is used to separate the unlikely values from the likely values. The left side of this distribution was of interest because the left side would indicate discrimination against females. What we learned is that 14 was not beyond the 12, so I did not have enough evidence for gender discrimination. Next, let's show you what happens if I identify my setup as hired males being a success. So my reference distribution now is going to keep track of the number of males hired. The outcome from the study here is not going to be 14, but it's going to be 34. Remember, there was 48 total individuals, and 14 of those hired were females. That means that 34 of those were males. When I was looking at the female analysis, 38.3% of the job applicants were female. When I'm looking at an analysis based on males, I'm going to use the 61.7%, so the other portion of that pot, 1 minus that 38.3%. We need to be careful here now on what end of the distribution that I care about. If I hire too many males, so if I hired 48 out of 48 males here, then that's going to be discrimination against females. So the upper end of the distribution now is going to be the side that I care about. So the setup here is going to be hired males is going to be a success. Hired female is going to be a failure. I'm going to use that 61.7% in this box. I'm going to build my reference distribution. I'm going to use right tail now, and I need to find a cutoff for right tail. It turns out that 36 is a good value to use here. So that 36, again, is on the upper end of the distribution because that's going to indicate discrimination against females. So again, when deciding what end of the distribution I care about, you need to ask yourself, what are we trying to prove with our investigation? So when I'm doing a tracking or a study with the number of males hired, I care about the upper end of the distribution. Now it turns out you're going to get exactly the same answer if you do it with the number of females hired or if you were to do it with the number of males hired. So what we learned when we did the investigation with the number of females is that 12 was my threshold value. 12 is actually 6 below the expected. The expected here is 18, and 12 is 6 below that. And 14, again, doesn't quite meet that threshold. So as I said, I'm going to get exactly the same outcome if I do the males here. 36 is going to be my cutoff on the upper end. The expected quantity for the number of males is going to be 30. Again, it's that 48 minus the 18 that I would expect for females. So that leaves 30 as my expected for males. My cutoff, which is 36, is again 6 above the expected. That's not a coincidence. It's going to happen that way. So these reference distributions, okay, we will get the same answer no matter which version of the reference distribution we use. Here my number of males is 34. 34 is not above that threshold, so I do not have enough evidence for discrimination against females. Okay, so for that short video was just to show you what happens if I set up my reference distribution backwards. Okay, thank you.